on Brevik from
With
Red Ice Radio.
With a UFO flying above. The Secret Service hooker scandal kicked in.
And that one's still on the front of Google News as I look at it right now. 42 minutes ago from the New York Daily News, Secret Service scandal hooker in hiding.
The glowing dinosaur coin came out that day with the Queen of England floating behind the dinosaur. I thought that was significant because it subliminally tells us that the Queen has been in control forever, and she will be in the future. Tornadoes hit Dallas, which had the UFO sightings a couple of weeks before. On the 17th, the Navy swastika building came back in the news. They keep bringing that up. And that's sort of a demoralizing thing because they're not going to do anything about that swastika building. And it was built, by the way, or designed at least, during the Mothman Flap in 1966, which tells you, my whole theory about what was going on there was that they were building these craft in West Virginia, these drones. And it was the ex-Nazi scientists that were helping them do it. So that's why you see so many British Intel, Odessa Intel types in the Mothman story. Different men in black that seem to connect to, some of the names are the same of different agents that I've read about that were active during World War II that were part of the XX group, which was the big British intel operation in America, run out of Rockefeller Center by Stevenson, who had a network of spies manipulating us into the war, including Madison Avenue guys.
Madmen?
Well, I don't know. Ogilvy, the Zion of Madison Avenue was in XX. Ian Fleming was in it. Roald Dahl, who wrote the Gremlins book. Crowley, Aleister Crowley. A lot of writers. And Crowley connects to the UFO story, probably. There's been rumors of that. So I think the whole UFO meme, the alien meme, may have been cooked up by British Intel originally, going back to the Theosophists who cooked up this idea of the Council of Nine in a spaceship orbiting Earth back in the 50s, but it actually goes back further to the spiritualists, I think, in Tibet. And the interest in Tibet is shared by both the Brits and the Nazis. The 17th also had the Amelia Earhart. That's one of our lost cause stories, Unsolvables. Ted Nugent comes out and gets involved in with his shtick, which is an entertainment distraction.
I see that in the same way as the sort of, the Limbaugh kind of distraction. It's like no one really gives a shit what you think, but supposedly it's the most important story in the world.
There's an alternative to the elite problem story, something they're embarrassed about and trying to cover up, which is the big money good news stories. This is where companies announce huge profits, and it always happens this time of year. It's typically ExxonMobil announcing, the largest profits in history.
Well, I thought you were going to say, big money, good news being Mega Millions.
Well, you mean the lottery?
Yeah, the big lottery show.
Yeah. I have a funny story about that. In Charleston, the lottery is located on the same property as the Marathon Oil facility and the GE warehouse, all owned by Rockefellers. And then I looked at there's one famous guy in West Virginia who won the lottery. And he continually is in the news because it totally ruined his life, right?
Oh, he several years back.
Yeah.
And he's been beaten up, and it was like, why'd you have a suitcase of $10,000 with you at the bar?
Yeah. But did you know, and here's why he's so cavalier, is because before he ever won that money, he was already a millionaire. He was worth $18 million, I think, because why? He's a pipeline guy, which means he probably does work for the Rockefellers. It's a rigged lottery. you see.
I basically, on my Twitter account, I put out my prediction that weekend saying, now watch, Mega Millions plus April Fool's Day. We're going to see, chicanery and, funny money going around the story. And then we did. There were duplicate tickets and people lying. Right. And
yeah, that is true. Whatever happened with the duplicate ticket story?
Yeah, that one went away.
Yeah. On the 18th, we had The Missing Boy, Pat's Z comes out. On 19th, we had the 2-pack, The Soldiers Playing with the Corpses, and The Unresponsive Plane. And then today we have Loch Ness. Nessie has been found. And a story about 1980s mountain man, something or other, which I'm not sure if that really... if that's really a significant story or not.
Now, I kind of, have my main kind of just Google News page somewhat customized, so it still shows me, the main pop kind of stuff, but it, of course, knows I want to see Oregon and West Virginia and other kind of stories. John Racy, GOP West Virginia Senate candidate, condemned for Nazi smoking ban comment.
Oh, wow. They just let Zimmerman go. Or on bail for only $150,000.
Uh-huh. So this brings it back to me, and in a way to maybe start to bring it full circle here, that I've seen, over these few weeks, the Trayvon Martin and the Charles Manson helter-skelter kind of story connected too with the Hunger Games, which is that super popular film. I think the Lotto is a form of the Hunger Games, and the Trayvon Martin story. Because I don't know if you know much about the books or the film, but it's basically, kids competing for our entertainment to the death in a dystopic future.
Yeah. That is preparing us for a future when people will have to be sacrificed, I think. Either by FEMA, something or other natural disaster situation, or I lost that last one, but it's or by bad healthcare. That's the other thing. It's like we're coming up on a time when so many older people are not going to have healthcare,
and we're still waiting on the big decision on Obamacare from the 9.
You are the Jesse Sharpton Chomsky of conspiracy. I just had to throw that out. I had written that down before.
You like my flow.
There's a lot of missing kid stories, though, heartbreak stories every Ides, and that was another category that I forgot to mention. I think we covered them all.
See, and I this is essentially what I kind of do on the site anymore. I rarely have time to kind of post full stories, and I end up just putting up once a week what I call a news purge, and it's just a big collection of all the headlines I've kind of collected and put together and sort of resorted so that they do flow in somewhat coherent way. And I do those on each of my main sites. So I just want to kind of mention some of the things I have on the occult site tying into the Titanic meme. So I'll run down my quick list here. Human remains possibly found in Titanic shipwreck. There's a story, research says women more likely to die in ship disasters than men, which you would... But what they actually mean is the women and children first rule gets ignored. So it's not that they're weaker and they, can't make it off. It's that they get elbowed out of the way by dudes. We have the San Francisco yacht accident. Coast Guard calls off search for missing racers. Killer swan blamed for man's drowning. Did you see that one?
Yep.
And small plane sinks into the Gulf. No sign of pilot. Meanwhile, divers search pond for a missing soldier in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Yeah, that was some strange story out of North Carolina recently that I connected to the military base. So just about everything that happens there, I would say, is connected to the military base. That's weird.
I found myself saying, again, several weeks ago to my girlfriend about the amount of shooters that seem to come from the Pacific Northwest or, the Fort Lewis.
Yes, absolutely. There's been like 3 of them at least in recent times.
And even when they're not the massive kind of stories like Bales, they're still the smaller stories where, oh, yeah, they came home and, killed their family.
Yes. That was that guy in the Rainier.
Uh-huh.
And that's a weird spot there where that happened. That's a paranormal spot, actually, believe it or not. So I think sometimes people are affected by geomagnetic energies. That was one of the theories I had about this spot where the school burned down, was that either the geomagnetic forces caused Manson or whoever it was to burn it down, or else it caused, through the deaths there, that the spirit of the dead people are somehow haunting the area and causing other sightings to occur. Because I noticed that people would often act out, because we always played there, football and baseball, basketball and stuff, and that people would have unnatural, angry reactions to things. And speaking of anger, that's a key motivator for shopping. I don't know if you know that, but anger increases shopping. So sometimes they'll often have a spate of stories right before Christmas to get people, I think, to shop more.
Have you heard anything about Squeaky Fromme being in the Pacific Northwest?
No. I would love to speak with her and Sarah Jane and Charlie, actually. I'd like to interview all of them, but it doesn't seem like that'll ever happen. I'd like to know, because they refuse to admit. Oh, first of all, there's a feud between Squeaky and Sarah Jane for the love of Charlie. That's pretty well documented. But neither Manson or Moore will ever talk about their relationship. And I think it's because of this situation where they got to remember that the Moores property was considered to be an underground railroad for Jews fleeing Germany. And this is all happening right next to the carbide plant. So they were probably bringing in scientists through her home. Paperclip, basically. Because her dad worked at DuPont, which, by the way, we think they were sending some of the Philadelphia experiment guys to. Because my dad was stationed at the Philadelphia experiment. And they moved him to Charleston.
DuPont, Bayer, the FBI, all those things infest West Virginia.
Yeah, there's something going on there. But we could, we could speculate, but it would be great to talk to Manson or Moore and try to get him to talk about what happened. Because it seems like Mothman, whatever this thing is trying to reveal something about this. And I think Moore was some kind of operative for the government. In fact, I have a letter from a lady who claims that Moore told her that she was an operative. And she disappeared for 10 years before the Mothman flap started. Both Manson and Moore were free, running around doing something around the time of Mothman. Probably helping support these scientists who were building the drone craft at the time. That would be my best guess.
So Manson was calling Oregon. That was one of the places.
Yeah. I've heard, you hear different things. There's some town in California, Northern California, up near Oregon, where a lot of his former wives or whatever live. I saw some interviews with them. They wouldn't tell where they lived, but there's also supposed to be a Manson family clan in West Virginia near Huntington. Which is pretty near Point Pleasant.
So do you think that Manson, the man, will just kind of fade away? There won't really be any... I don't know. With this last kind of parole hearing, I don't know what else could kind of happen.
Yeah, I think that's his 11th one, probably the last one.